The world of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Soulbound is an immense setting with near infinite paths to explore. You'll find noble kings and horrifying tyrants, dubious politicians, and of course, honest traders. Verdant forests, desolate wastes, hopelessly deep valleys, and mountains that pierce the sky itself. This is an epic fantasy setting that never fails to capture the imagination and allow for some of the most awesome stories possible to be told. My name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and today I'm starting a series aimed at folks who want to jump into Soulbound, the role-playing game produced by Cubicle 7 based on the Warhammer title by Games Workshop. This series of videos is meant to introduce you to the Mortal Realms as a setting, the various classes you can play as, and explore the vibrant Mortal Realms easily, acting as a resource for both your Dungeon Master and you. Consider it a primer so you and your group can begin to understand the setting a bit more, and on this channel I have playlists made for every single faction in the game. So if there's a specific army or enemy type that you want to learn more about, I likely have something on it. But rather than starting with these individual characters, I wanted to focus on what the setting really is, and so let's begin. Soulbound is set in what's called the Mortal Realms, 8 realms that loosely correspond to a different type of magic. They present themselves as discs, but don't be fooled into thinking that they're small or compact. Each of these spans the width of our planet. Towards the center of the realm, things are extremely stable, and honestly they wouldn't look terribly different from more traditional fantasy settings. Think Lord of the Rings or something like that, your basic fantasy setting. But as you go outward toward the edges of this disc, things get wild. The magic that holds the realm together gets looser and kind of frays at the edges, becoming more intense. And I'll give you an example here. If you are in the realm of Akshi, which corresponds to the realm of fire, things in the center, like I said, are quite normal. But when you get towards the edges, you'll see lakes of flames, red-hot sand that eats away armor. People may combust into flames, and dangerous beasts are roaming the wastes. It's as if the fabric of reality itself is kind of becoming undone towards the edges. Now, of course, when I say the realm of fire or Akshi, it's easy to think the whole place is just a giant volcano, but that's so far from the truth. Every realm has every environment that we on Earth would understand. They all have forests and mountains and oceans and swamps and sweltering deserts and frozen tundras. It's more that each realm has those things, but presents them through a different lens. Forests in Chaman, realm of metal, may have verdant groves of wildlife that are strong as iron, but it's still just a tree, but kind of like with a metal, filter or lens over it. So now that we understand what a realm is like, let's chat about which ones there are. There is Azir, the realm of heavens, which focuses heavily on storms of the sky and things like that, lots of lightning and intensity. Giran, the realm of life, which focuses on verdant forests and groves and things like that, again, life magic. Akshi, the realm of fire, as we've just talked about. Chaman, the realm of metal, which is full of rich minerals and resources for industry. There's Gur, realm of beasts, where the wildlife, everything is alive, and there's this incredibly massive food chain of just predator and prey. Everything is out to kill you. There's the twin realms of Hish and Ulgu, and these act honestly as sort of the night and day of the mortal realms. Hish is a brilliant light at the bottom that acts as the sun, and Ulgu is a realm of shadow and darkness, and so when Ulgu comes in front of Hish, that's how we get day and night. And lastly, there is Shyish, the realm of death. Now, truth be told, you don't need to understand every single realm, right? Your story will likely be set in one, maybe 2 of these at a time if you go through a portal that we'll talk about here in a second. And in the future, I'll have more videos going one by one, exploring them, trying to help you as a player and, a game master get a real feel for what these realms are like. What is important that you understand is that this setting is endlessly vast, right? It's full of adventure and magic, and by combining, where you are in any given realm and the kind of aspects of that realm and the lenses with which they look at things like forests, cities, mountains, and so on, you as the game master and as players have a chance to explore anything that you can come up with. It can be as wild and crazy out there as you want, and it'll still absolutely make sense within the lore. You have complete freedom. Now, rounding out the discussion on the physical setting, I just wanted to chat about how these realms are connected to one another, as I mentioned before, as it will likely come up in your adventure if you go from one realm to another. Each of these realms, right, these discs of reality as we're calling them, has hundreds and even thousands of these portals called realm gates. Think of it a bit like the show and movie Stargate. These gates can be large, so big that entire armies can walk through shoulder to shoulder, or as small and unassuming as a stone doorway in a deep valley, no bigger than a human. This series of portals links the realms together, and they are vital to the existence of civilization because it allows trade and material and military might to move across this vast setting. Think of it almost like a spider web that connects all of these things together. Some gates can point in more than one direction, so like you can come into it through Akshi and then kind of turn it, so to speak, so that if you go back through it, you end up in a different realm altogether. It's very interesting. It's, again, creative freedom to give you the chance to travel great distances within your story and have it make sense timeline-wise. Now, I'll save the details of your adventure for your GM, as they will tell you where you are within the mortal realms and have more detail for you. But I'd like to turn now and chat about something equally important to the setting, and that is the gods. At its core, Age of Sigmar, and therefore Soulbound, are the stories of gods at war, how they influence, bless, curse, and guide their mortal followers to achieve their ends. Gods will often infuse their power into mortals, allowing them to perform acts of unbridled heroism or villainy in their name. Sigmar is one such god, residing in his home realm of Azir, again the heavens. He's the god king of lightning and storms. They are all his to command, and he essentially feels like, if you're familiar with Norse mythology, Odin. Think of that kind of role in this cast. He's commonly seen as a paragon of good, making the most sacrifices to protect the lives and freedoms of mortals in the realms. Now, I don't want to do a full dive here on every god, though I will in the future, throughout separate videos, but I wanted to shout him out specifically because, honestly, his name's on the cover of the book, right? Age of Sigmar. It's when Sigmar started making massive events happen in the grand narrative. But there are many deities in this setting, each with their own favored warriors and followers and cults and more. And at this moment, I just want to touch on 5 beings that stand out as being vitally important to the setting, and this is because they're opposed to Sigmar. If Sigmar is the paragon of good, we're going to talk about the 5 gods that are evil, called the gods of chaos. There are Nurgle, god of pestilence, disease, and despair. Tzeentch, the god of fate and wizardry, lots of sorcery images, mutations, things like that. He wants to have these very intricate plots that see cities fall and crumble from the inside. There's Khorne, the god of blood, murder, martial prowess, just very blunt force, walk up, have the bigger army, claim skulls and blood for the blood god. There's Slaanesh, who actually is getting a release at the time of recording of this video, and is all about excess. So when you focus too much on yourself and become excessively obsessed with being the best warrior or having the finest foods and things like that, it's whatever debaucherous thing that you can come up with, but it's just taken to the extreme, right? So it could be good things like defending your city, but if you become so obsessed with warfare that you then start attacking other civilizations to prove that you're the best, that's when you start getting into a dangerous pattern. And lastly is the Great Horned Rat, which is the god of a race of rat men known as Skaven. He doesn't necessarily have specific traits or ideologies that he assigns himself to. He's just kind of an all-encompassing, I am the god of this specific race. Each of these are born from the worst parts of mortals, right? Fear of death created Nurgle with his, despair and that kind of stuff. Plots and schemes, murder, excessive indulgences, and more. Fundamentally, the epic drama of the gods goes a bit like this. There's a pantheon of gods that are generally made a home in each realm, and they all butt up against each other as they differ on how they want to rule and live and, conduct themselves. And then there's 5 other gods, the one that I just mentioned, the Chaos Gods as they are known, and they want to destroy and enslave everything. So that first pantheon we're talking about can battle and argue, but they can also help each other if need be. But at the end of the day, they're all opposed to chaos. I know these can be weird concepts to have different pantheons. There's the Chaos Gods and there's everybody else and they don't necessarily get along, all that stuff. I know it's a lot to take in, but I promise I'll have videos out soon explaining this drama in more detail. But what I want to stress here is that the gods are very real and active in the lives of mortals. That's what's really important for your role-playing experience. And as we explore various characters and locations, this becomes extremely relevant. So we've talked about the mortal realms themselves, the ever-present drama of the gods, and there's one last little thing I want to tack on here to really give you a feel for the setting, and that is the briefest possible history. I'm going to hit just a few story beats that honestly will fill in enough background for you to kind of jump off of when it comes to conversation and dialogue and that kind of stuff. There was a time before those 5 Chaos Gods ever arrived, and the Pantheon, as I know them, we mentioned before, were actually fairly unified. This was called the Age of Myth, a time of unprecedented growth and prosperity, where technological and arcane innovation reached its absolute heights that seem unimaginable now. The realms were full of life and on all different kinds of kings and societies and kingdoms and people, but slowly cracks began to form. The gods, the, quote-unquote non-chaos ones, the good ones-ish, became very restless, each one getting more absorbed into their own plots and wishes, and because of this, no one noticed when the insidious powers of chaos began to seep into the mortal realms. This culminated in a time known as the Age of Chaos, where the 5 Chaos Gods we mentioned before came en masse, bringing their demons and mortals and corrupting and destroying every single thing that they touched. The Age of Chaos lasted centuries, and darkness consumed the mortal realms, and it got so bad that the Pantheon, our non-Chaos Gods, completely fell apart, and Sigmar, god of Azir, retreated to his realm, locked every single door to it, and with his leadership gone, right, he was kind of like the unifying force of this Pantheon, with him gone, and the Chaos forces on the rise, nearly everything was lost. And after a long silence, like I said, centuries, Sigmar reopened the gates of Azir and took the fight back to the mortal realms. And so this event is why we call it the Age of Sigmar, hence the name of the game. Now, I want to bring up this point for a simple reason, to put the world in perspective. You and your teammates play as mortals, exploring the realms, going from city to city, but understand that order and civilization are not yet the norm. Bastions of good, like meaning, cities, any kind of civilization that's not built upon chaos, are like pinpricks of light in a sea of darkness, right? Evil lurks all around you, marauding warbands of the Chaos Gods, corrupted landscapes that are incredibly hostile. While opening the gates of Azir restarted the war for the realms, darkness is all around what little civilization is left. I also bring this up because as you encounter NPCs and various characters with different kinds of backgrounds, there is a tension between people who were locked out of Azir that survived and people who were in it that were safe and sound. There's this tension, even though they're all against chaos, they see each other as, cowards who went and locked themselves away, or savages who somehow found a way to scrape by in the mortal realms without, Sigmar's light and love. These decisions make tension and therefore interesting characters. And so with that, we have the setting, the characters, and the stakes. All of these things go into creating a vibrant and incredible world for you and your characters to explore. Again, this is just a quick primer of the most basic information, and I plan to go into more detail about cities, races, the gods, and more. If you have a specific thing that you would like to learn about first, go ahead and put it in the comments down below. I'll absolutely, for this series specifically, be using everything in the comments as inspiration on where to go next. And I'll even give you credit for the inspiration for the video. I'll screenshot your name, your comment, and throw it up there for you. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I hope that you'll join me as we explore the mortal realms. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.